SOVRYN has, through its community, now built out since launching in April the ability to trade, to do margin trading, to do borrowing, to do lending, is introducing perpetual swaps, has a governance system for the ecosystem built out, has bridges to other chains, and most importantly, a trust minimized peg to Bitcoin, and that transactions that occur on SOVRYN are secured by Bitcoin miners, and also expand and increase the security budget of those Bitcoin miners, because they create an entirely new set of transaction fees that go to Bitcoin miners. But now, over the next few weeks, two teams that have been working together, one team called the Mynt team, which has been working on the Mynt protocol, and one team called the Zero team, which has been working on the Zero protocol, both of which are sub-protocols of SOVRYN, are going to introduce Bitcoin-backed stablecoins and a remarkable new type of product, the ability to take out loans against your Bitcoin at zero interest. So I think maybe a good place to start is why I think this is so exciting. For a long time, I thought that if we could get truly decentralized stablecoins, then basically it's game over. One of the, Satoshi created Bitcoin with a goal of creating a peer-to-peer currency. And a currency has several components. It has the store of value component, so that you can make sure that you are not going to be inflated away, and that becomes more and more important with every passing day. But it also has the medium of exchange component, the ability to use a currency to make payments for everyday things, and the medium of exchange leads to the unit of account component. In other words, that people start pricing things in the currency. And Bitcoin exists in a world in which there are already fiat currencies that people use as their unit of account and their primary medium of exchange every single day. And so the experience has been that you kind of need to get into Bitcoin. And in fact, even more than that, people often price their Bitcoin holdings in dollars or their local currency. And so this has always been a point of centralization for Bitcoin. And it's always been something which has held Bitcoin back from the full potential of adoption, for people to be able to save their money in a non-volatile way, to spend their money in a non-volatile way, and to price things in a non-volatile way in comparison to everything else that they're doing in their lives. So stablecoins have become very, very popular for exactly this reason, because they provide you with a lot of the benefits of crypto. They can also interact with Bitcoin and other crypto assets, but they have stability. They have a peg tied to the currencies that people are familiar with, most obviously the dollar. But none of the stablecoins that we have today are reliable and decentralized. There are pretty decentralized stablecoins, which are sort of like the algorithmic stablecoins, but they are very risky. They're a game which, they're basically a new kind of fiat, right? Which they have these central banks, which are smart contracts, which issue tokens and destroy tokens on an arbitrary basis in order to try and keep a peg. And then you have centralized stablecoins like Tether and USDC, and really like DAI, which provide you with a higher degree of security sort of on a day-to-day basis, but they have very big risks, both regulatory risks and operator risks, and they obviously have those risks because they're centralized. So what if we had a truly decentralized stablecoin, and more than that, one which is backed by the most reliable asset in the space, by Bitcoin? So I think that's always been the dream, and I think of it as game over, because once you have that, people around the world can start to use that asset instead of other things, always are able to convert in and out of Bitcoin, and so now suddenly Bitcoin becomes useful in El Salvador, in exchanges, but also anywhere for saving, for payments, for unit of account. And it basically takes our digital gold, our Bitcoin, and introduces to the world of digital gold what currencies have always done. Instead of people transacting in the store of value in gold, right, which you keep in a vault, you transact in a token, a piece of paper, or a coin, which represents your claim on that gold. And that's exactly what a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin does for our digital gold. So what's cool about this is we already have Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. It's called Dollar on Chain, and it's very cool. But it is limited because it requires a high degree of collateralization, and it requires that you basically sell to the money on chain protocol your Bitcoin, and then the money on chain protocol becomes the owner of the Bitcoin, and it issues against that dollars. What we really want is we want to have many different ways that we could choose to get this Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, and many different ways to create stability, so that under any circumstance we can have a capital efficient way of creating Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. And in fact, not just of the dollar, but of any peg that we want, including a non-fiat peg. And that's what Mynt does. Mynt is a system for aggregating these different methods. So dollar on chain, zero, and other methods that are being built out in the Sovryn ecosystem can be aggregated into one super stable Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. And that's why it's called the Mynt. It's the Sovereign Mint. It's, probably the most direct competitor to the Federal Reserve because it issues dollars. It does so independently. It does so without recourse to dollars that the Federal Reserve has created. And so that means that each and every one of us can now participate in the act, not just of using dollars, but of minting dollars. And what Mynt does is it opens the door for us to have many different ways of creating these dollars. And one exciting way that is coming out is Zero. And what Zero does is Zero provides a way for you to borrow against your Bitcoin from yourself. And because you're borrowing from yourself, you're paying zero interest rate forever. And what that means is that nobody, not miners, not savers, not speculators, nobody needs to sell their Bitcoin ever again. Because if you want liquidity, you can now get dollars on the basis of your Bitcoin. And you can keep that line of credit that is created for you forever, Laura. And as Bitcoin keeps going up forever, your line of credit keeps growing and growing and growing. And so you can continue to borrow from yourself as the value of your Bitcoin accrues more value forever. And this is something that potentially you can do, and then your children can do, and your grandchildren can do, and they can be like this nest egg of Bitcoin that the generations can live off of. So how does that work? How can a zero interest loan exist? Right? Who are you borrowing from? Well, because Mynt is its own bank, Mynt issues exactly like a bank does. Every time a bank gives out a loan, it's not taking money from someone else. It's creating new money. Well, Mynt, when it creates this loan for you by interacting with the Zero protocol, it creates new Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. It creates new dollars, and it gives them to you on the basis of your own holdings. And so, like rich people today, Elon Musk doesn't sell his Tesla stock when he needs to buy something. What he does is he borrows against his Tesla stock, and that Tesla stock continues to go up. And so, just from the accrual of value in the Tesla stock, if he needs to, he can pay back the loan. And so this opens that, it democratizes that for everyone to be able to do with their Bitcoin. But it's even better than that because Elon Musk has to pay interest rate, and that's why he has to sell some of his stock periodically in order to pay down those loans. But with a 0% interest rate, that loan can basically be held forever. And so I think this is an extremely exciting thing, both because we're getting a truly decentralized, reliable stablecoin backed by Bitcoin, the world's first truly decentralized stablecoin, and one which will remain decentralized into the future, because I think DAI for a while was decentralized, but that has been reduced. And then in addition to that, we're getting a way for Bitcoiners to be able to unlock the value of their Bitcoin for their everyday expenses, for everything from doing groceries to buying a house, and never have to sell Bitcoin again. So I'm extremely excited about what's happening, and I think this is like, it was this kind of thing that got me excited. The potential that these kind of things could be created was what got me excited about Sovryn, and it's the kind of thing that I want to use. And let's open it up to discussion and questions.
All right, so I'm gonna follow based on the who requested first. So first we're gonna have Jack. I'm gonna put you up to speak right now. Go ahead, buddy.
Yep, loud and clear, Jack.
Question: the loan value ratio of the zero worked out yet?
We couldn't hear all of the question. If you could repeat that, please.
I think I got the question. He's asking about the loan to value ratio, or what can also be called the required collateral ratio, right? So when you take out a loan, you need to make sure, right? The way a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin works is it needs to know that it's always backed by at least $1 worth of Bitcoin. Jack, if you could mute yourself, please. But Bitcoin is volatile in comparison to the dollar, and so its price could go up, its price could go down, and so you need it to be a little bit over-collateralized. And the question of how over-collateralized you need it to be is based on how efficient and effective the mechanism of allowing people to redeem their Bitcoin for $1 at any time is. Zero is a very, very efficient system. And so what it does is it allows for a collateralization ratio, or an LTV, a loan-to-value ratio, of 110%. In other words, to create $100 worth of Bitcoin, the lowest amount of Bitcoin you would need is $110 worth of Bitcoin. Now, having $110 worth of Bitcoin in the Zero protocol, in other words, having the lowest possible collateralization ratio, is also the riskiest possible collateralization ratio, because if Bitcoin suddenly dips against the dollar and your collateralization ratio drops below 110%, then your position can get liquidated. What does that mean? You could end up with $105 worth of stable coins, and the person who redeemed against you could end up with $105 worth of Bitcoin, right? So you would end up with a stable coin, so you wouldn't lose money, but you would be taken out of your Bitcoin position. And then one question that people could ask is, what happens to the other $5? Well, that's the profit for the Zero protocol, right? So the Zero protocol makes profit in two ways. One, from an origination fee. So on average, creating a loan like this, even though you pay zero interest, you pay a 0.5% origination fee. And then the second thing is, when there are these sort of redemption liquidations, 5% goes to the protocol and to the liquidators. Now, what's advisable, therefore, is that if you're going to hold a low collateralization ratio, you should babysit your loan a little bit and make sure that you don't fall under. You also need to take into account something else, which is that the system as a whole always makes sure that it's going to have more than enough Bitcoin to pay everyone back. And so it requires that the system as a whole has 150%, or $150 worth of Bitcoin for $100 in circulating supply and of stablecoin. And so if the system as a whole drops below that, then again you can start redeeming against the lowest collateralized positions. So if you want to take a very, very long-term position, and you don't want to have to think about it or look at it at all, you want to do a 300% ratio. If you're going to take a shorter-term position, right, a shorter-term loan, you can have a lower collateralization ratio. And if you're going to look at, babysit your loan very carefully and make sure you're always ready to add more funds or to reduce the size of the loan, then you can take as low as 110%. And that provides the user with a great deal of flexibility. And right now, I think the UI that's going to be launching is going to be quite janky, but the team is working on a UI that's going to make this very, very easy and intuitive for people to understand, to have like super safe loan, super risky loan, and something in the middle. Jack, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, groundbreaking stuff. Thanks.
All right, Mishmash, you go next. Just unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time, Yago. I'm not an expert in this field, so forgive me for the simple questions, but is it correct that the security of funds when operating within the sovereign ecosystem is dependent on the robustness of RSK?
The security of the funds?
What sort of anything that you do within the system, whether it's holding RBTC or sovereign, and sort of generally having some of one's wealth locked up in various parts of the sovereign DeFi ecosystem. Is the security of your funds, dependent on the security of RSK? Is that fair? And as a first question.
Yes. First of all, it's definitely fair. It's definitely something everyone should be aware of, right? When you're using rootstock, when you're using Sovryn, you're taking on a number of new types of risks, right? Now, I think these risks are definitely manageable, and the system has proven to be secure in its operation up until now. But it's very important that anyone who's doing anything with their Bitcoin understand the risks that they're taking, right? So when you're using the Zero protocol, for example, here are some of the risks that you are taking on. One is the Bitcoin that is held as pegged Bitcoin, right? So all the Bitcoin that moves from main chain into rootstock, into Sovryn, is pegged Bitcoin. And if something goes wrong with the peg, you could be locked out from your funds for a while, or you could potentially lose access to that Bitcoin forever. Now, the system has been designed to be extremely robust and to make sure that that never happens. But there are no guarantees that robustness is 100%. So, for example, yeah.
I'm sure it's like a reasonably complicated topic, and therefore sort of can't be treated in completeness here. But are there any documents or sources that you think are particularly good for people who want to read more about the sort of current arguments or critiques of the security, and maybe any recommendations for keeping up to date with sort of how that evolves if it does change over time?
Yeah, so I would recommend. If you follow the SOVRYN blog or SOVRYN Twitter, you'll see updates as that changes or improves in the future. But if you just Google rootstock pegnatories, you'll find documentation which will be able to cover that for you. But just so just on a very, very high level, what the rootstock peg does is it has a multi-sig system which has multiple pegnatories. And what is a pegnatory? It's some party that are signers to the multi-sig, but are also running software which independently from them, because it's using a hardware secured module, also signs the transactions. And then both they and the hardware secure module are receiving cryptographic proofs in the form of SPV proofs about the activity. In other words, the ability to transfer funds in and out of the peg. And so for something to go wrong, you'd need a majority of both the hardware secure modules and a majority of the pegnatory. multi-sig system which would receive the funds after a year of inactivity. So again, there's definitely a risk there. I would say it's probably the most secure multi-sig system anywhere in existence, but that's one risk that you're taking. The second risk that you're taking is that rootstock could potentially be 51% attacked, which could revert transactions, right? Or slow down the chain. A third thing is that Zero itself is a smart contract system, and there may be a vulnerability in the Zero protocol. So I think those are the risks that you are taking when you're using these systems. And then there's a final risk, which is that you don't understand what you're doing. You somehow, lose your keys or something like that. All of these risks, I think, are substantially lower than the risk that you would experience if you were using a centralized service of any kind. Not just because it's not centralized, but also I think the technology is open, is more auditable, and is more secure. But it's also true that anything that you're doing like this is more insecure or more risky than just holding funds in a cold wallet.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And perhaps it falls into one of those aforementioned categories, but if you're successful with the use of this sort of stable coin and various other elements of your DeFi ecosystem, what is the robustness of the Sovryn ecosystem to sort of a state level interference or pressure to close down?
Yeah, so I think Sovryn is actually quite robust to a state level attack. There's 13,000 people, or at least 13,000 addresses that are participating in staking. Any changes to the protocol require a vote and some degree of majority. Protocol changes that can actually shut down the system or change access to user funds would require an 80% majority. And so, if the SEC were to come to me or to you and say, look, what Sovryn is doing should be regulated activity, and we want you to start being regulated, then we would have to invite them to write a SIP, a Sovryn Improvement Proposal, and try to get it voted on by the community, because there's no other way to make that change.
Thanks. That's really helpful.
All right. Well, we hope that covers it, Mishmash.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Our next speaker is Destinesia.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Welcome.
Welcome, Eden. First, Eden, you and big congrats to you and the team for all the exciting developments, and amazing what you're all doing. Really cool to see. I have two questions. One is on the duration of the loan. So, am I correct in understanding there's no duration to the loans? There's no obligation to pay off a loan, say after 3 years, 10 years. It has an eternal maturity. Is that correct, or how does it work?
That's correct. That's correct. You could, because you're not paying interest, right? So if you were paying interest over time, it would be like your collateral was held in a leaky bucket, and you would be sort of leaking Bitcoin slowly over time. But because there's zero interest on the loan, you can hold that loan forever.
Okay, that's clear. And pragmatically, because I'm based in the Eurozone here in the Netherlands, so how would I then spend that loan into the real economy here? Supposed to fund part of a house, for instance, or buy a car, or take on or pay the education for my children. How would that work?
Well, that will change over time. In the first instance, the stablecoin will be added to Babelfish. So Babelfish Protocol have said that they're going to add this as one of the stable coins in their aggregated basket, which means that you will at any time be able to convert these stable coins to USDC, to DAI, to Tether, to Binance stable coins, and then you can withdraw them in the way that you would be able to withdraw any of those stable coins. What we would like to see grow around this, and there's going to be efforts to introduce, is the ability for companies to start plugging this in to retail payments, to ATMs, to debit cards, so that you'd be able to actually just go, with your Apple Pay and pay directly, at the cashier at the store, basically using your line of credit. Ultimately, where I think we would like to be is in a world where you have Bitcoin, you hold your Bitcoin in the system, and it stays liquid Bitcoin until such time as you want to make some kind of purchase. And at that point, you'd basically take a little bit more out of your line of credit, right? So you go down to the store and you buy $100 worth of groceries. You would decrease your line of credit by $100, and you just swipe through your card, which would be attached to the system that does that automatically. So that might take a few years, but I think that's ultimately where we're going.
Wow, that makes sense. Thanks a lot, and cannot wait actually for that to materialize. Maybe one follow-up question. I assume that the collateral, the BTC collateral, you will then put on the Rootstock blockchain, and once it serves as collateral, it's in a way tied up, so you cannot use it for other things, right? I mean, that is how I should look at it. That's correct. Is that correct?
Right. So it's like when your line of credit is backed by the Bitcoin, right? So when you're using your Bitcoin for the line of credit, then obviously you can't use it for anything else. Otherwise, we'd be double counting, right? And we're not a centralized service, so we don't do that.
No, exactly. No, clear. I get it. So if you want to then say make your Bitcoin free again, then you need to pay off your loan. That is ultimately the trade-off, I think. So you build up that line of credit versus your locked up Bitcoin, which you can then spend into the real economy. But suppose you want to use Bitcoin for something for different purpose, then you pay off the loan.
Well, there are two options, right? So one is that you would just come and put more dollars. You want to buy a house. You buy a house. You take out a mortgage after you've bought out the house on the basis of the house, right? And then you immediately pay back the loan. Your Bitcoin's free again, right? So that could be like one way that you would do it. The other way is that you hold the position, right? And Bitcoin goes from $50,000 to $100,000, and then it goes to $500,000, and then it goes to $1 million, right? At which point, you say, all right, well, my original loan, I had $50,000 of collateral. I now have $1 million of collateral. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically convert that $50,000 and give up that, basically sell off that $50,000 to pay off my loan. So you could imagine that you create a loan today and you hold that loan for, I don't know, let's call it 5 years, and then 5 years from now, Bitcoin's at $1 million. So for 5% of the Bitcoin that you put in, you've now paid off your loan, and the rest of your Bitcoin is free and clear.
Clear, Eden. Thanks a lot, and thanks very much for answering the questions. Wish you and the team all the luck, and keep on pushing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Guys, just a reminder, if you still don't follow us on YouTube, Telegram, Facebook, or here on Twitter, make sure to do that. Okay, subscribe on YouTube. Be the first to be updated on all the news from Sovryn. We will update regarding the start date for the Zero presale very soon, so make sure that you're subscribed to all of our updates, and you'll get to know first. Now, next we have Techie World. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How are you doing, Techie?
I have two questions. one question is regarding tokenomics and another question is regarding partnerships. Let's go with second question. Do you have any partnerships with other protocols to integrate Zero? Because at max Zero will be in RSK chain, right?
Yes. So there aren't any partnerships announced, and SOVRYN, as you know, doesn't announce partnerships because SOVRYN is a protocol and it doesn't really enter into partnerships in that way. What does happen is that other projects sort of announce partnerships or plans to use SOVRYN, and we've seen this happen several times in the past. So, for example, Transact, when they introduced the fiat on-ramp, there are conversations that I've been told about which are happening to introduce retail payments using these stable coins that are minted by Mynt. And there are also companies or projects that are talking about providing liquidity and providing on-ramps and off-ramps. So I expect that we'll hear so those sort of partnerships being announced over the coming months.
And regarding tokenomics, when I was reading the SIP, I saw for Mint there was no vesting, and for Zero there was 1 month lockup. So how do you think there would not be a dump? Did you get my question?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't.
So in SIP, it was mentioned that bootstrap event sale, about basically pre-sale, there was no vesting, right?
Yeah.
Everything is free for Mint, and for Zero, it was 1 month lockup or up to 1 month lockup. I didn't understand. Is it 1 month or up to 1 month? Like, what is the meaning of up to 1 month?
I think the idea was that it may take a month, or I think the original thing was 6 weeks before the system launches and you're able to start trading and using the Zero tokens. So that was added to the SIP to let people know that that might be the case. It might be shorter.
Okay.
Okay.
I get it, that point. Due to some, let's say, technical work, it might take up to 1 month. Let's put it simple. So there is a possibility of dump, right? Because it's fully unlocked.
Yes, I think that chances of like a dump in the way that you're describing it don't really exist in quite the same way with sub protocols, because these are SOV bonded tokens, which means that they're basically backed by SOV. They in a way they're kind of like fractionally wrapped SOV, and so you can always convert them into SOV. And that when the protocol launches, the value of the SOV will still be there, and there's a small fee for converting it back to SOV. So you'd actually lose money sort of unnecessarily, like that. If you've got hold of Mint tokens or Zero tokens, there's not a lot of benefit to trying to immediately convert it back to SOV. So I think that would be unlikely. But it's possible. People, the system is designed to allow people to do with their tokens as they choose.
That's because by default SOV has fallen down from 20 to 19. Mostly the sale happened was around 20 to 25. You can guess average, right?
Yeah.
Between 20 to 25. Again, if people it might take a snowball effect, and people might sell because SOV sold. Cascading effect might happen. That was one thing I'm thinking about it.
Right. Well, it could happen. I'm not overly concerned about that. In fact, it would almost be, the users have really very little to gain from that. But it could happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Sid, go ahead.
Yep.
Thanks, Iago, for your time. So my question is, what happens to the existing lending pools for USDT, and I think there's a lending pool for XUSD as well, right? Both of those require interest, etc. What happens to those lending pools?
So those lending pools will continue to exist, and I think will continue to be useful. And the reason they'll continue to be useful is because they also allow you to borrow against other types of collateral. So, for example, Ethereum can be handed as collateral. Stablecoins exist as collateral in that system, and so people can choose to borrow against other assets. It's also the case that there's different mechanism there, right? So it's true that you pay interest, but you can't be sort of redeemed against unless you fall below the 150% collateralization, which is not the case with Zero. And Zero, in the unlikely event, and this I think is an extremely unlikely event, but in the unlikely event that the entire system is under collateralized, even if your particular line of credit is collateralized above 150%, you could still have that redeemed into the stablecoin. So while it's an unlikely event, it's a possible event, and so that's a slightly different situation. So I think what will happen in all likelihood is that some people will continue to use that lending facility because they're familiar with it. Even for Bitcoin, they'll certainly continue to use it for other collateral, and probably over time, or maybe even immediately, it might happen quickly, but we'll probably see that Bitcoin lending is going to happen more and more through Zero.
Thanks, Iago.
All right, Scarcity Miner, go ahead, buddy.
Oh, yes, thank you for your time. I was just wondering, so like how we can interact with the Sovryn platform and how, we can easily deposit Bitcoin and it turns into smart Bitcoin, RBTC. Will there come a time in the near future where we could easily transfer that RBTC back to on-chain Bitcoin, like either through the R wallet or using the Sovryn platform?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that the system is still considered to be an alpha is because that's still quite a headache. It's complicated and annoying to do right now. But a system to allow for fast peg out as well as fast peg in has already been developed and has been audited. And so it's getting quite near to deployment. And I think that it's likely that it'll be deployed before the year is out.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm loving the platform so far, so thank you for answering that for me.
Right. I think when that happens, probably that will be a point where we can choose to declare that Sovryn is out of alpha.
Okay.
That'll be like a big event for us. We should have a party.
Yeah, we should. A big DeFi Bitcoin party. All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, I love Sovryn, so thank you.
Thanks very much, and I love seeing you. I've seen you in a number of rooms. It's cool. Thanks.
Yeah, again, thank you very much for everyone here who's participating, asking questions, listening. We're very glad to have you with us, supporting the Sovryn project. Now we're going to have Moonkin next up.
Hello, guys. You hear me all right?
Yep. How you doing, Moonkin?
Yeah, I'm good. Good. Nice to see you guys again. Happy to hear about the peg out feature. Just to be clear there, you're implementing the peg out feature from Sovryn. It's not like it's being facilitated by the RSK team, and then at some point it's going to be integrated in Sovryn, or it's actually being developed within Sovryn so that feature will be available for us as soon as possible. Is that correct?
Right. So like Fast BTC, it was developed entirely by Sovryn Core. Mm-hmm. And so Fast BTC bidirectional FastBTC has also been developed entirely by Sovryn Core. And although there is ongoing work between Sovryn Core and the RSK team around various improvements to the peg, but yeah, this is has been developed by Sovryn Core, and one of the cool things that we're seeing is more and more protocols like Tropicus and Money on Chain on the Rootstock network have integrated directly with FastBTC as well.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Happy to hear. So I have a few questions. Maybe I'm just going to spray and pray them, and you can sort of answer as best as you can. But I have a question on if you could talk a little bit on the short summary interplay between Mynt and Fish, and then I'd also like to know who's deploying Zero, and since it's a fork of Liquidity, are they cooperating or talking to the Liquidity team? And what are the long-term plans for Zero USD on RSK and eventually perhaps on other chains? Any thoughts on adding Liquidity USD to Sovryn? And finally, thoughts on Blockstream and the Liquid network? Sorry if that's
that is a lot of. Yeah. We should have a spaces just with you.
Yeah, next time.
So I'll try and answer as many of those as I can remember.
Yeah.
So okay. So
Zero
team have been talking to the Liquidity team, and I believe they are planning to airdrop some Zero tokens to Liquidity holders. The interplay between Mynt and Babelfish, or the XUSD aggregator. So the XUSD aggregator and Babelfish are working to create an insured pool of a whole set of different stablecoins. Mynt has a much more narrow focus. It is and plans to always be purely Bitcoin backed. And so the idea is that you, as the user, should understand the difference between these two and recognize the different risk profile and collateral profile of both of these systems. And Babelfish with XUSD has already helped substantially reduce the potential for systemic risk from one stablecoin like Tether or USDC in the Sovryn system. But I'm hoping that we'll see more and more users. And I'd encourage all of you, to take some Bitcoin, convert it into the Mynt stablecoin, whose name I think we've kind of already revealed, but I've been told not to talk about it. But into the new stablecoin, and pair that against Bitcoin in a liquidity pool, and start using that, with the goal that we can get the pool of liquidity for the Bitcoin-backed stablecoin to be at least as deep as the XUSD stablecoin, because that will help make Sovryn a truly unique platform focused on Bitcoin, but also to be uniquely resilient, because it will have at its core a decentralized Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. So I think there's something that we as community members can do, just as pioneers in the space, to help deepen that liquidity, make it available, and encourage traders to come and trade against that, and really give birth to that ecosystem. With regards to, I think the last piece of your question was, do we expect to have liquidity in Sovryn? So they have a token called LUSD. I think LUSD might be added at some point to the Babelfish basket, but that would be very much up to the Babelfish community. And certainly, they're a very open community, so you can propose it to them. I think what we would like to see is the new Bitcoin-backed stablecoin begin to be used across multiple different chains. And so, we've got a number of bridges that have been developed, more bridges will be deployed. And I think this, we should also be encouraging the use of this as, a significant stablecoin across the DeFi ecosystem and across all chains. Mm-hmm. And then finally, with regards to Blockstream, so Blockstream had a very cool announcement today. I think it was today. maybe it was yesterday, about issuing a bond with El Salvador. I think that's really cool. I think we'd like to, and we're Sovryn is doing some things, and there's a team working with El Salvador in around integrating Sovryn, and I suspect we'll start to see more announcements around that over time. Beyond that, Sovryn is a very different project from Liquid, the Liquid sidechain, and I think Sovryn and the rootstock sidechain have very significant advantages. They are more permissionless, Bitcoin backed, so they're backed and secured by Bitcoin proof of work. They pay transaction fees directly to Bitcoin miners. There's a trust minimized peg. These are all, and it's Turing complete. These are all very, very significant advantages. And so, when one of the reasons I became excited about Sovryn, and one of the reasons that I think Sovryn is likely and has already been growing faster than these other protocols, is because it has this set of advantages. And despite the fact that it's the youngest and sort of at the moment the least funded of these different efforts, it's growing very, very robustly and quicker, and has more actual activity. So I think Sovryn is currently the dark horse and is underestimated, but I think that is rapidly changing.
Wow, you actually managed to remember every single question. I'm impressed. Okay, yeah, thank you ever so much for your time. I will sit back and enjoy the rest of the show.
Sure thing, Moonkin.
Thanks, Moonkin.
Yeah, hi Iago. Hi, SOVRYN.
Cool. Sorry to stop you, but you have kind of a line here. I think People was next. People Laporto.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Can you hear me well?
We can.
Yes. Okay. So, quick question. If you borrow on the Zero protocol, and initially, for example, you put in 150% LTV, and the value of Bitcoin increases so much that you end up sitting on 300% LTV, can you uncollateralize 150% of that LTV?
Yes.
Okay, nice and simple answer then. All right. So basically, if you end up over collateralized, you can free some of the Bitcoin that's kept in collateral for other uses.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Very good. It would be all in the GUI.
And that's what I mean when I say you can either just see your line of credit expand and increase over time, or you can, choose to even close out your position as Bitcoin rises. You can close out the position, end up having only a small fraction of that Bitcoin used to pay off the loan, and the rest of your Bitcoin's free.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, people. Bitcoin King. Go ahead. Gopal, you go next after him.
Hey, I just wanted to say this is an amazing idea, platform that you have set up here. I can't believe this is actually happening with a 0% interest on your own Bitcoin. I think it's genius. My only question is there a top-up program if Bitcoin does go down in a correction? Would you be able to top up more Bitcoin so you don't get liquidated?
Yes, so that's currently manual, but you can definitely, in fact, the whole system is reliant on the idea that users should be able to do that. So that's definitely possible. One thing which the Zero team have discussed working on is helping to automate that system. And that's a more complicated thing. And if they manage to do that, which I think they will, it also opens up a really interesting new product for Zero, which is that you can earn yield, dollar-denominated yield on your Bitcoin. The way that would work is you would basically put Bitcoin in, and the system would generate dollars and start lending them out. And then as the value of Bitcoin rose, it would automatically mint more Bitcoin, more dollars, and start lending those out.
Wow.
So you'd be earning interest.
Oh my
and
God.
it can even go a step further than that, and it can use the interest that it earns off of that to just buy more Bitcoin. And so you could basically go and use this as a way to just sort of passively stack.
You would have like an infinity loan that could constantly keep printing you more. And wow, that's amazing. I don't think people really understand how huge this is. This is awesome. Thank you very much.
Sure.